welcome to IT Global Direction. I am your host for the day, and my name is Hlahatsi-Baloyi. I'm looking forward to hearing how are you contributing to the IT Global Direction. Doreen, who are you, where are you, and what do you do?
Thank you, Rosa, for the warm welcome. Like you mentioned, my name is Doreen Thabe, and I am an IT software head. I am really excited about the shape and direction that IT is, morphing. Things are changing very quickly, and we are almost in a space where one needs to evolve, as a leader, and inspire your teams to to evolve as well. So I'm really excited at the speed that things are happening, and yeah, at the scale of change. So really looking forward to that. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. So as a leader, I know you're dealing with quite a lot of things in your space as an IT leader. But what are the key things that you find, I don't want to say it's a struggle, but it's a challenge that you feel like it needs to be discussed and put on the table to be discussed?
So generally, I think with the way technology is moving so fast, I think as a leader, you really challenge to adapt very quickly and also inspire the team to move at speed and at scale. And I think there's quite a lot of pressures in the system to perform and deliver. And I think often what we find is that because we're working in this very fast-paced, agile environment, and there's a high demand of IT skills, that generally there's a high turnover in IT skills. And I think the challenge is making sure that how do you make sure that you still continue to deliver on business imperative in this ever-changing environment, because at the end of the day, the customer needs doesn't stop. IT is constantly challenged to deliver. And yeah, we navigating a space where we're seeing that there's high IT staff turnover and largely due to the demand of IT skills globally.
Yeah, and Doreen, have you thought of any ways or any innovative ways to mitigate this gesture that you just discovered? Do you have anything that you think leaders can start thinking about or coming up with creative ways to mitigate any of those issues?
So I think as leaders, we generally are challenged to move very quickly and really step out of the constraint of the traditional recruitment, the traditional employee value proposition from an IT staffing perspective. And so we really are challenged to look at other ways. So traditionally, when you look at entry level, IT professionals, you're looking at interns from a university system or college, whatever it is. But I generally think is actually challenged, or one needs to start spotting talent outside of those, traditional, spaces. Like, how do you spot talent? There's like really upcoming young guys that have got YouTube channels that are making a massive headways in the tech space. Like, how do you bring that into a corporate space and also at the same time not a box or limit those guys, because those guys are like booming with ideas, and they're like just passionate about solving problems. And I think where there's a commonality is that they're passionate about solving problems. And I think with any corporate environment, we need people that can solve for today's problems for tomorrow. So I think generally recruiting or spotting talent, it definitely lives outside of the traditional systems of recruitment. Although there's also constraints around, the labor laws, making sure that you don't go outside of those. But I think we need to start finding ways to also almost manage the recruitment process as well as IT professionals, because I think that we're feeling the biggest impacts that, with the high turnover, you need to really think very quickly outside of the box to make sure that you attract talent and you continue to deliver on business imperatives.
I think one would ask, Doreen, now that you have hired those people that may not have what we may call more formal education. How do you make sure now that when they come in, they do understand the technologies that are in use, and they also recommend based on business understanding? So how do you mold the thinking of those people when they come into the organization?
I think that's a very good question, Rory. I think for me, the key thing is making sure that you continuously continue to mentor, understanding that there is obviously limitation from a formal schooling perspective, that there is element that's lacking. So I think constant mentoring and also putting them on a program that will also help them grow within the organization, learn the corporate culture, but also at the same time not limiting or boxing the elements of innovation. So I think generally a program to make sure that you bridge that is lacking from lack of formal education. I think yes, definitely mentoring, and mentoring. Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. One would also ask, so how do you make sure that you're solving the problem of turnover? If now they come in, they get trained, and then they understand the skills, and then they move on as other employees that are well trained. So how would you mitigate such challenges that may come with this innovative way of recruiting?
So I think for me, it's really in two folds.
Yeah.
So the high turnover is not necessarily going to go away, but I think these kind of programs buy you time. They buy you the opportunity to get return on investment, and then I think the other part of it is that how do you make sure that in the space of high turnover that you continue to deliver? How do you make sure that your environment is also conducive in this high turnover space? That if I bring in a couple of guys, what is it that my environment can allow these people to grow or deliver within 6 to 7 months, versus if you're gonna get someone that's gonna stay with you for only an experienced person that's gonna only stay with you for 3 months. So I think it's in two folds. It is also layering the environment or cultivate or preparing the environment for the high turnover, because I think gone are the days where you could say that you're going to just only attract skills based only on competing on a remuneration package only. That we've seen that doesn't work. So it's really about how do you make sure that you buy yourself time to deliver, and at the same time how do you lay the foundation or the ground to make sure that in this high turnover, what is it you almost need to make sure that the environment is set you up for a quick return on investment, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's also incredible. And what are these skills that we want to ensure that we do have them in these in organizations? So are there any specific skills that we feel like, they're leaving a lot, and those are critical skills for businesses to progress?
So definitely what we're seeing in the new tech space, your Java developers, your .NET, C# developers, those are the guys that are really at the height of high turnover, very much in demand. If I was to compare to the older technology stack, COBOL, that also has its own challenges, by the way, that that because it's almost like a aging skill, but very critical to to a lot of the corporate business systems that are currently running. But I think generally, I think in the new tech, if we almost adjust our way of attracting skills, I think that can also help us in making sure that much as we've got high turnover, it should no longer be seen as a negative, but we should be seen as how do we operate quickly and faster in those spaces where we know we've got high turnover. I mean, I think if you look at a typical example, I'll make an example with a call center agent in your likes of your international companies like your travel In your airlines, your, retail stores, they've got, high turnover as well, but they've somehow managed to make sure that, they can procure skills anywhere from everywhere. And, whether it's be on a different language base or, different time zone, they've somehow managed to make sure that in that space, they are continue to keeping the businesses operational with, the high turnover. I mean, as somebody that's calling Amazon, you wouldn't necessarily know that they're churning on, call center agents on a daily basis. And I think that should be our approach in terms of IT skills, that we are able to create environments that allows for that kind of high turnover.
And Doreen, just before we wrap up, is there anything specific that you can maybe leave out for IT or technology leaders out there to start thinking about as they are starting to plan the future of technology and the future of blending technologies in the industry? Is there anything that you think is important for them to know? And as well, are there any specific technologies or people with specific skills that you think they need to start harnessing?
So, a very good question, Rory. I think there's, the world of IT is evolving at a rapid space. We've seen now there's a demand for, data scientists. There is really a demand for process engineers. There's a demand for, software developers, advanced QA skills. There's a demand for project managers. So I think for me, what is very important is that we need to make sure that, number one, we evolve the current skill sets that we have in-house to be able to, to work on these new technologies so that we can move faster. Number two, how do we make sure that we bring in skills that could only be with us for the next 6 months? How do we make sure that we get return on investment very quickly? I think for me, that's very important. How do we make sure that we, shorten our delivery cycle? So I think today what we're seeing is that we cannot have projects or, implementation running for 3, 4, 5 years, because as soon as you do that, you're already out, you're no longer competing. So I think for me, the learning that I take out of this is that how do we make sure that we evolve faster, we implement very quickly. And I think very critical, setting up the foundation in making sure that we're able to work in this high turnover that requires us to move faster. And I think very importantly, never stop, learning. I think for me, there is no skill that's permanent. You need to constantly evolve, and that's what we're seeing. Not being limited to just one skill set within the IT, sphere. You need to evolve. You need to have multiple skills in your toolkit. So I think that's what I believe, that's what's going to make successful organization, and what's going to make sure that IT shops delivery. So having cross-skilled IT professionals, I think that's very key.
Yeah. Doreen, thank you so much for joining the IT Global Direction podcast today. I think you left us with some pertinent and critical things to think about. You mentioned that the days of waiting for our workforce to come from university, we may need to rethink that and also look at people that may have as minimum as a grade 12 from a South African context, and see how we can mold those members to come and be part of organizations, which is quite important. I think it may just resolve more than just one problem. It may increase employment in countries where there's high level of unemployment. You also mentioned another critical point, that internally it's important to keep evolving and keep learning and keep adapting to new technologies, and not always look outside to get resources that will be able to assist the organization. look at how internally people can be reskilled and evolve to new technologies. It is quite great. We also indicated that, yes, there are some hot topics around data and analytics and all these new technologies that people are talking about. But it's also important to just have a model or a structure that can be used to reskill regardless of what new technology is coming on board. It's something that organizations need to think about. And the days of having long projects, you indicated that we need to find ways to be more agile. I think it's a new term used, but I mean, agile has been a term for years, but try and be more agile, try and deliver quick, so that even if people leave, there's still continuity. Yeah. So I think those were critical points. If I missed out anything, please tell me. But I think there's a lot to take out of this today's conversation. Did I miss
No, I think you've summed it up quite well, Rory. I think we live in very interesting and evolving times, and I think we should all see this as a call to action to embrace change. I'm certainly excited about what's happening in the industry, and looking forward on what's coming ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doreen, for joining the IT Global Direction today. I hope our leaders can pick up one or two things that you did share today. Thank you for joining IT Global Direction podcast today. Thanks, Doreen.
Thank you, Rory, and thank you for having me today. Thank you.